Hey guys, it's Sam, and today I'm going to talk about a little bookish goal that I have that's not really for this year, but it's just kind of like in general, and I could get it done this year, but I might not. I'll get into it. As you know, I've been deeply committed to reading books that I know I'm going to enjoy, books that are fairly highly regarded so that I know I'm going into something that is like pretty good odds of me liking it, you know, like good writing, stuff like that. And I got the little idea because I'm going to Worldcon this year. Worldcon is where the Hugos are like held and voted on. It's a big science fiction and fantasy like book convention. It's being held in Chicago this year, and I live in Chicago, so why not? And since I can vote in the Hugos this year, I was like, well, why don't I look and see like who the Hugo Award winners were for the last like 10 years. I knew who some of them were, but I was like, let's look at novels and novellas for the last 10 years. And I was looking through, and there were like a number of them that I had read, more novels than novellas, but a number of the novellas as well. And I was like, well, let me also look at the Nebulas, which are another big science fiction and fantasy. Both of these are adult book categories, another big awards. So I was like, let's look at those. There's a lot of overlap between the Nebulas and the Hugo winners. But I ended up writing down all of these and figuring out that of the 16 books that won either a Nebula or Hugo or both in the last 10 years, I'd already read 7 of them. So I only had 9 still to read. And a lot of them were books that I was already planning on reading anyway. So I kind of want to talk about like my plans to read some of these books. I do also think I'll end up reading a number of the novellas that are on the list, but I'm not making that a complete goal. Right now I'm reading through the Binti novellas by Nnedi Okorafor, but also the Murderbot. I started Murderbot this month. So I plan on reading a lot of those, and those have been winning for the last handful of years. But yeah, let's get into the 9 books that I plan on still reading that are award winners. Also, feel free to tell me in the comments other awards that you feel like I should look at and like pay attention to. I tried looking up lists online, but it was kind of hard to find things that weren't just like BuzzFeed lists and things like that that I'm pretty sure the publishers pay to be on, because there are a lot of books on those lists and I'm like, I've never heard of this. So yeah, if you also let me know some like award categories or things might be good to look into for potential books to pick up, let me know. So I'm gonna work from most recent all the way back. The 2021 Hugos have happened, but the 2021 Nebulas haven't happened yet. But the books that typically are nominated for like the year more recently are the same ones that are nominated for the Nebula the year. I'll kind of show you what I mean. The book that won the 2021 Hugo, but the 2020 Nebula, was Network Effect by Martha Wells. This is the first novel in the Murderbot series. So there was a series of, I think, like 5, is this the 6th book? There were like 4 or 5 novellas before this. Murderbot is essentially a sentient, like robot human hybrid kind of thing, which works as a security officer, but you find out is more like sort of socially awkward and have social anxiety and doesn't want to be around people and just wants to watch its like silly shows that it like downloads to its system, but then ends up getting pulled into like a lot of stuff. So this, I've only read the first novella so far, but this, like I said, is like the 5th one in the full novel, and it sort of is following, again, Murderbot's antics, and I'm sure it's going to continue to explore like what makes a human, what makes a person, all that kind of stuff. Then the 2020 Hugo Award winner was A Memory Called Empire by Katie Martine, and this is a book that I've been seeing around, but I wasn't really sure, but I'm trying to read more sci-fi for sure, like adult sci-fi especially, because I do really enjoy like all the adult sci-fi that I tend to read, but I was worried that this would be too much just from like who I was hearing talking about it. I thought it was going to be more hard sci-fi, but this is actually a space opera. And I love space operas. And what I gather from this is this follows a main character who is an ambassador into like a alien culture. Like she's from like a mining station, and she ends up going to be the new ambassador in this empire, and she finds out that her predecessor has died and doesn't know why, but like foul play is suspected, and so she's like, am I gonna die next? And sort of figuring out this mystery while also like figuring out things about the culture and things. So it's not First Contact, but like a little bit of just like, again, all of these like cultural players, different aliens, things like that. That's right up my alley, so I think I'll really enjoy this one. I've also heard that it's sapphic. Then the 2019 Nebula winner was A Song for a New Day by Sarah Pinsker. This is a book I knew nothing about and had never even heard of, and I tend to pay attention for the last like 5 or so years to the Nebula and the Hugo Award winner, so I don't know what happened here. I'm just now actually reading, and the fact that this one in 2019 makes me want to just yeah, I don't like this. This takes place after a global pandemic in which large public gatherings have been made illegal, and follows like a singer-songwriter who basically wants to have like a concert, I guess. The synopsis literally says, terror attacks and deadly viruses have like outlawed concerts. I don't So it sounds like we follow the singer-songwriter character, and then we also follow a character who works with like drone deliveries and finds a way to help this character like deliver her music and like sort of perform and like illegally perform or whatever. This sounds a little bit more like dystopian, kind of. Potentially dystopian, post-apocalyptic. Doesn't sound like it's going to be super heavy on the sci-fi. Again, I didn't hear anything about this in 2019, so we'll see. This might be like a library read or like a audiobook. I don't know. If you guys know about this book, feel free to let me know. Then I had read most of the books that were winning for the next couple of years in both categories because it was mostly N.K. Jemisin's Broken Earth series for a while there. Then we get to 2016, and the Nebula winner that year was All the Birds in the Sky by Charlie Jane Anders. I have read Charlie Jane Anders' other book that came out a little bit more recently that I'm forgetting what the name of it was. This was the one that was fairly highly regarded and a lot of people were talking about, and seems like it's sort of a crossover between like literary fiction and sci-fi. Like, it seems like this author does almost like literary speculative stuff. So yeah, I heard a lot of people talking about this. A lot of people that were following like awards and stuff that year were talking about this a lot. So this is one that I always kind of in the back of my head intended on reading. Then the 2014 Nebula winner was Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer. This is one that I've been meaning to read for a while. I really like Jeff Vandermeer's Born and his like the new weird genre, and this now has a movie made out of it, but it kind of differed from the book. But basically some like scientists end up discovering this like area that is being changed by, I think, like alien presence, but it basically is you know, sentient nature corrupting things, which I dig. So it's almost like, I think it probably is like an alien virus or something. Again, I haven't read it yet, but it's a whole trilogy, very weird. The imagery of Jeff Vandermeer's novels is just very out there, kind of like psychedelic feeling, and so there's this like mystery element too to like what's happening. And I believe the main character that we follow, like her husband had gone in there and was like corrupted or whatever, so there's like this emotional connection to it. So yeah, I've been wanting to read these anyway, and they're fairly short. They're called like the Far Reach trilogy, I think, and they're like smaller books, and you can also get a bind up. So this one I might get from like a local bookstore too, like to support. Yeah, so that one I've been looking forward to reading for a while anyway. Then the 2013 Hugo winner was Red Shirts by John Scalzi. I like John Scalzi. I've read a number of his now, like maybe 3 or 4 of his books. This is basically following like Star Trek Red Shirts. There's a thing in the Star Trek fandom. I've never actually watched any Star Trek. I know, so I don't know if I would like this. People say that it's still pretty good and kind of stands alone. But basically the red shirts in Star Trek are the ones that typically end up like dying in episodes and stuff. So these are like the sort of the cannon fodder. So it is sort of following those background characters within this bigger world. So it's almost like a loud fan fiction. That's like been published almost. Like it was traditionally published fan fiction almost, because it's, again, it's in this like Star Trek universe without being like Star Trek. Anyway, so this is one that I was always like, yeah, I could potentially read this. Then 2012 for both awards is when, like 2012 and 2011 are books that I really hadn't heard a ton about. Like one of them, a few of them I like heard a little bit here and there, but this is when like I wasn't really in the book world, wasn't really like paying attention to award winners and things, so it makes sense. But also it's a little weird that some of these books have sort of fallen off in popularity too. So the first one I had heard about, but I didn't really know what it was about, and that is Among Others by Joe Walton. And this seems like it's sort of like, is it fabulism? Is it like fantasy? Like, is this all real? Is this all like a kid's sort of like made up way to escape trauma? But it follows this girl and her twin sister who are growing up in Wales, and it says in the synopsis that they play among the spirits. So it's like, is it the Fae, whatever, and they also find solace within like science fiction novels. And then one day her mother starts like toying with the dark arts, and she gets sent away, and then she has to kind of come back later as an adult and sort of like figure out some of these things. So a little bit of mystery, a little bit of like speculative, a little bit of sci-fi in there, like kind of a genre bender it sounds like. And I did remember hearing this when I first joined BookTube. And I do remember this being talked about here and there when I first joined BookTube. So this one, a little intrigued by. Then the 2012 Nebula winner was 2312 by Kim Stanley Robinson. And I hadn't looked up the synopses for a lot of these until just now. But this is described as a hard sci-fi, which means I'm not gonna read it. This is like the one on the list that I'm not gonna read because I don't do well with hard sci-fi. It's not for me. It's too over my head. I have to think way too much. I like a complicated sci-fi or fantasy, but not when it's hard sci-fi. So no, I will not. You know what? I'm actually not gonna read like the last couple of years in there either, because the 2011 Hugo Award winner and the 2010 Nebula winner was Blackout / All Clear by Connie Wells, which was like a duology, it sounds like. And it's more of like a historical fiction, historical sci-fi like crossover thing. And I also tend to not do well with those. It's kind of amazing that like none of those were like more recently. You know, I don't have any conflicts with some of the things that won more recently, and I've read, like I said, a lot of them, but I'm not gonna make myself read something I don't want to read. And I don't want to read those because I don't do well with historical, like sci-fi, typically speaking. Like historical fiction in general is not good for me in book form. I like it in movie and TV show form though. And then hard sci-fi is a no-go for me. So yeah, so now instead of 9, I have 7 to read, which means I've read 7, I need to read 7, and so I'll read 14 out of the 16 of the last like 10 years, you know, big SFF award winners. So yeah, comment below, let me know what you think of this little mission. Again, if you have any other recommendations for like awards lists or just like lists that I could potentially like read from, maybe do like a reading vlog, I don't know, like something with that, I think that'd be really fun. But like I said, it's really hard to see a list that's like sort of unbiased from like the whatever entity is publishing it, you know? But yeah, also let me know if any of these that I decide not to read are actually worth it, that you think I'd like, vice versa. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye.